Thank you, Senator Pratt. Senator Back.
President, in 2012 I had the privilege of hosting the Honourable John Howard at a wide-ranging seminar in Perth, and one of the questions he was asked, Madam Acting Deputy President, was why, when Paul Keating won government in 1991, did the then opposition, led by Mr Howard, not object to legislation that the Keating government introduced in the House and in the Senate? His response was relevant to this debate, Madam Acting Deputy President, because he said this. He said the people of Australia decided that the Keating government should be allowed to govern. They won the majority. And so Howard then said it was not incumbent on us in our opposition to oppose the will of the Australian people. Why is that relevant to this discussion? Because on the 2nd of July this year, the Australian people decided that the Turnbull-led coalition would continue to govern for the next 3 years at least in this country. Nobody can argue, Madam Acting Deputy President, that the coalition took to the 2016 election a commitment that there would be a plebiscite on same-sex marriage should the coalition win government. We did, and it is a commitment that, unlike our political opponents, we will hold true to. That is the critically important point. Now, when that plebiscite will be held is to be determined by others. We've had advice from the Australian Electoral Commission that it would not be practical to have such a plebiscite this year, it now being mid-September. Madam Acting Deputy President, as you and I well know, there is a state government election in early March in Western Australia, and I, for one, would not want that distraction to be interfered with a plebiscite prior to then. So if I had my say, I would be urging that the plebiscite be held after that date. But that's my own personal opinion. But I want to make this point to everybody in this place. We went to an election giving an undertaking that there would be a plebiscite on same-sex marriage, that the people of Australia could make their decision on how this will go. Not many plebiscites through you, Madam Acting Deputy President, to the young people. They say that during the First World War there was a referendum on whether or not we should have conscription. There was no referendum. There were two plebiscites, the difference being, take notes up there, a referendum is held should there be a potential change to the Constitution. A plebiscite is held to ascertain the will of the Australian people, and that is what the Australian people knew when they went to the polls prior to and on the 2nd of July. So if people want to get this matter resolved, the quickest way would be for Mr Bill Shorten, the Leader of the Opposition, to actually carry on with the Prime Minister's move, and that is to have the plebiscite. Now, unfortunately, Mr Shorten is not going down that path. But I can say to you, Madam Acting Deputy President, that the Labor Party has no high moral ground in this space, because it is the case the Labor Party is actually bound to a certain position, and that is to oppose what we now have in this country, and that is that marriage is between a man and a woman. And you will hear people say, no, that's not the case. Labor isn't bound until about 2019. Well, I simply ask you, and if Senator Pratt was here because she's replaced him, I would simply ask you to put that point to now Mr Joe Bullock, then Senator Joe Bullock of the Labor Party representing the state of Western Australia, because, Madam Acting Deputy President, as you and I both know, then Senator Bullock said he could not accept the position of the Labor Party on this issue, and so he did the honourable thing and he resigned as a senator for Western Australia. So the Labor Party has a fixed position on this. We can't have a debate and a vote in this parliament because one of the two major parties has already told us how they're going to vote. It is up to the Greens Party, and perhaps others might also say whether they are bound to their position. We in the coalition are not bound. We've had this discussion in our joint party room, and we took a decision that the best thing to do would be to seek the confidence of the Australian people on a matter as important as this and go to a plebiscite. But people change and they're entitled to change their opinions. But I just want to make this point, if I may. 2010, a time since I've been in this parliament, the now leader of the opposition in the Senate, Senator Wong, whose motion it is we are discussing here today, made this statement, and I quote, from the 26th of June 2010, on the issue of marriage, said Senator Wong, I think the reality is there is a cultural, religious, historic view around that which we have to respect. The party's position is very clear that this is an institution between a man and a woman. Current frontbench members of the Labor opposition, Mr Bowen, Mr Hussick, Mr Burke, Ms Rowland and Mr Fitzgibbon in the other place, all voted against same-sex marriage in 2012, as was their entitlement, as is their entitlement now, because as Australian citizens, they will be entitled to a vote in the plebiscite. Madam Acting Deputy President, I have said publicly, and I will repeat this statement now. I have been asked if in a plebiscite, if the result of the plebiscite is a favouring of same-sex marriage, changing what is now the law of the land in which marriage is between a man and a woman, what would my position be? Well, I'll state it again in this place, Madam Acting Deputy President. It is this, that if the people of Western Australia voting in a plebiscite, if the majority of the people of Western Australia say that they want same-sex marriage, I will change my position and I will support same-sex marriage because it is the democratic position of the people in my state, and I challenge the other 225 people in the other place and this one to agree to the same. That if a plebiscite from their state, in the case of senators, or indeed their electorate in the case of members, if the vote by the majority in that state or in their electorate is one way or the other, that they will commit in the coming days to do as I'm committing to do, and that is to change, if necessary, to change my situation. Now, it is the case as a Western Australian, a plebiscite, unlike a referendum, will not require the majority of people in the majority of states and territories. It will simply be a straight majority of the population of Australia. So I know very well that the population-dominant cities of Melbourne and Sydney will have a skewed opportunity and a weighting in this debate. I know that. I know that. But I object vehemently to statements that have been made by leaders of parties. For some reason or other, the people of Australia can't be allowed to have their say on what is such an important issue. And I also think it is a disgraceful comment to speculate or postulate or hypothesise on how different people in the Australian community might react to the views of others. That's not the Australia I know. That's not the Australia I know. And I object vehemently to party political leaders giving some sort of prediction as to what the mood and the behaviour and the performance of people may be. We have laws in this country. We have very, very strong laws that protect people against discrimination or against any other form that might be offensive to them. They exist in this place. But I say this very, very strongly, Madam Acting Deputy President, that I have got very, very little faith in those who are not prepared to allow the Australian people to have their say in a plebiscite. I hear all these predictions that the vote is so overwhelmingly in favour of same-sex marriage that we needn't even bother having the vote. Well, is that the case? I don't know, Madam Acting Deputy President, and with deep respect, neither do you. But what I can say to you is the fact that this is an issue upon which the people of Australia should have their right to have a say. It has been put to me that the cost of something like $150 million is a lot of money. Yes, it is. Let me put that into perspective, if I may, for a moment. We are paying at the moment, Madam Acting Deputy President, through you to those in the gallery who are listening, this country is borrowing $1.2 billion a month, not to repay any Labor debt built up between 2007 and 2013. We are borrowing overseas $1.2 billion a month just to pay the interest. That's $40 million a day that we are borrowing when we were debt-free in this country in 2007. So yes, $140 million is a lot of money. It is 3.5 days interest on the debt that we are paying now to give the people of Australia your opportunity to be able to make your decision on whether or not you want to see a change to the Marriage Act. And I do have to say, Madam Acting Deputy President, I have little confidence in the integrity of people on the other side who are likely to put the cases for which they so eloquently speak. And why do I have that concern? Because I have long believed the best predictor of future behaviour is past behaviour. And the recent past behaviour is that of the scandalous Mediscare campaign leading up to the July 2nd election, when it took an ABC journalist to call the Leader of the Opposition out, the National President of the Australian Medical Association to call them out. But did they stop? No. And on the evening of the 29th of June, an elderly lady in a nursing home in Perth received a phone call, not a robocall, a phone call, asking her what she was going to do beyond the 30th of June when the coalition government, if we won it, would remove all funding for aged care and health care. That's the level of integrity. That's the level of integrity. And if it flowed through to this other exercise, I have no faith in Mr Shorten's position.
Thank you, Senator Beck.